I'll just do my intro. My name is Jane Geller, and I'm the Communications and Engagement Specialist supporting the Mercado Village Land Use Redesignation Proposal. We appreciate you all taking the time to join us tonight to participate. Your questions and input are an important part of this process and will be documented into a What We Heard report that will be shared with both the project team and the city as part of the application review. So we could probably go into the next slide here, the agenda. Here's a general overview of what we'll be discussing today. Before we begin, I just want to review a few quick housekeeping items. All attendees are muted right now to help minimize any background noise. But questions can be submitted at any time during the presentation or Q&A portion of the session using the Q&A function at the bottom of your window. It should be also, if you're on your phone, also at the bottom. You can also use the raise hand feature only during the Q&A portion if you would like to ask your questions out loud to the project team. But yeah, that's it. I will now turn it over to Allison to get started on the formal presentation.
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. My name is Allison Clark. I am the VP of Multifamily here at Section 23. We have a really exciting development project in the community of Mahogany that requires us to make this land use change. First and foremost, I do want to provide a little bit of information about Section 23 for those of you who are not familiar with our development firm. So we are a Calgary-based development company, which originally started in land or farming land in the southeast area of Calgary. So many of the land or the heritage land sites that the Olorenshaw family owned were located in the communities of Copperfield, in Mahogany, and then to the south of Mahogany is also our community that we are developing called Rangeview. So the lands that we're looking to change here are very important to us. They are central, or their centralized location is where the owner, Robert Olorenshaw, grew up. You will have noticed the grain containers and the old Quonset and airplane hangar that's located on his family homestead. So all around those lands is what we're looking at today. Section 23 also owns a home building company called Bay West Homes. So we are very active in the south side of the city, as well as in other communities around town. So from land to single family housing, and then now on to some more dense housing with vertical development for apartments and condos. We'll be venturing into that side of development here very soon.
Great. Hi, everyone. I am Kathy Oberg. I'm a planner at B&A Studios, and we also have Katie with us as well, and she's also a planner in our office. So I'm going to go over the application itself. As Jane had noted, we'll take some questions at the end, but certainly if you have questions as you hear things, feel free to put them in to the Q&A portion, and we'll get to those. But we'd hate to have you forget it by the time we get to that portion. So I'm going to start with an overview. This application is a land use redesignation for 3 parcels in South Mahogany with a combined area of 21.8 acres. This application amends the land use to allow for mixed-use development in the village center, as envisioned in the original Mahogany Community Plan. These sites are currently undeveloped and are adjacent to either side of the recently constructed Mahogany Boulevard and Mercado Street. To the south along Mercado Street is a future proposed commercial development, and now completed connection to Rangeview Boulevard. To the north is a future school site and the historic Olorenshaw Ranch site, which is not part of this application, but is planned to become a community hub in the future. To the northwest and east are existing and developing residential areas of the Mahogany community. Next slide. So the goal of this application is to allow Section 23 to implement the original village center vision of the community plan. The approved land use doesn't provide the flexibility and density necessary to create a true village center with a retail main street. The key changes will be to allow up to 6 stories as opposed to the existing height limit, limiting the sites to 4 to 5 stories, so just a little bit taller, and replacing the older restrictive land uses with a standard mixed-use district. This will allow for a variety of housing forms with an at-grade retail main street along Mercado Street. Next slide. The area is guided by the Mahogany Community Plan. These sites are within the village area, which is intended to provide a mix of low to medium density residential with a denser mixed-use corridor along Mercado Street. The site and the surrounding road network were previously laid out through an approved outline plan. This plan included a small public parkette and a one-way street along Mercado Street, which will remain unchanged. Next slide. The existing land use for the south 2 parcels is a direct control. And you might say, what is a direct control? Well, it's a custom land use that was created to allow mixed use developments before our land use bylaw actually had mixed use developments. And we now in our bylaw have an MU1, a mixed use 1 district, that was added as a standard district to our bylaw. It becomes a special district that was approved by council with very specific rules and uses. So this direct control remains as a land use for as long as it can be. It never changes unless you go through a land use redesignation process and change the land use, which we're doing here or proposing to do here and sharing with you tonight. So changing these sites to the MU1 does not change the intended use of the use mix that we had originally. It doesn't change the setbacks or other rules for the sites. The primary change is to increase the maximum height and to allow for those 6 stories that I did talk about. The north site is currently zoned M1, and that's a multi-residential district in the bylaw, which allows for low-rise multi-residential, most likely townhomes or low-rise apartments, and has a maximum density of 75 units per hectare. This site is also being redesignated to MU1 to allow for greater flexibility to build a mix of housing forms that could include seniors townhomes and apartments up to 6 stories as well. Next slide, please. I'm going to let Allison talk a little bit more about our initial concept plans that are still being refined, of course, as we go, and then talk a little bit about some of the vision.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. This is the difficult part about a land use amendment because we're still working through the design for the area. But what is consistent with what you see here is that we are looking to establish that Mercado Street as a pedestrian-focused main street, which will include that mixed-use retail product, similar to what you would see at the Jamin Westman Village type of building. So we will have ground floor shops and services, and those shops will be, 1,000 square feet up to a couple thousand square feet, depending on the user. The housing types that we're bringing into this area will include, as Kathy mentioned, a combination of both 5-story and 6-story product. The 6-story predominantly through that Mercado Street area where we do introduce that mixed use component, just to give us a little bit more flexibility around the main floor, because you need certain clearances to provide certain retail services. So that's centralized along Mercado Street, where we already have some angled parking in place and very good connectivity into the community of Mahogany. And then around at the perimeter of the site, we anticipate delivering some 5-story buildings, likely condominium product, just to step the site down to the single family housing to both the west and the east. The goal for the site is to allow for, again, a very active pedestrian zone and connectivity with that municipal parks and pathways, to provide a lot of amenity for the residents that live there, but also for people throughout the community of Mahogany to connect through the spaces into other parts of the community, such as the school or other community services. So, yeah.
I think the only thing I'd add to this before we switch to the precedent slides, we could go back, Katie, for 2 seconds, is access to those sites. We're very fortunate to have roads that surround the site, which gives us the opportunity to, I would say, spread out the access locations to the underground parking. The goal is to, utilize the higher order roads that we have on the north, as it's a collector standard road, as you can see with the roundabout, but also to utilize some of those other access points, especially the ones that are across from the commercial on the south end, and overall to just balance all the traffic movements. The goal, as Allison has said, is to maintain that main street as a very pedestrian friendly one and try to eliminate as much conflict as we can with the vehicles that are going to be coming to the area, both for residents that are living on the site and those that want to definitely come and utilize the retail services that are there. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Katie.
And I think
oh yeah, go ahead, Allison. Yeah,
we're going to get to that here is just with the parking. So it's our goal to deliver all of the parking for the residential product below grade. So we are trying to limit the amount of surface parking that we have to keep everybody below grade. So just limiting the on-surface parking to retail parking and visitor parking for residential. So our goal is to provide approximately 1.3 stalls per unit, which will give a good strong ratio to provide residents with parking options.
great. Okay, so what we've been able to do over the past 2 decades, since the Mahogany Community Plan was established, was to learn from examples across Calgary. What it takes to create a thriving mixed-use Main Street. And you might have been to some of these ones that we're going to mention, because they are great areas around the city. And you'll see a lot of that same form that we're thinking of. Of course, it's always better when you have a good idea of, visuals are good tools to be able to understand a space. So even in established and vibrant inner city neighborhoods like Mission, local retail can struggle to succeed at grade if there's not enough residents in the immediate vicinity to support them. So we're looking to these successful examples, including the West District, the University District, and even Westman Village, as Allison had noted. It's clear that there needs to be a critical mass of local population above to support a walkable Main Street at grade. This sweet spot seems to occur at about the 5 to 6 story range with a retail podium. In the same way, we hope to provide the right mix of density and flexibility for the north site so that it's viable for a modern seniors housing complex with a mix of unit types, while also allowing potential for at-grade non-residential uses that would complement the future ranch site next door. Okay, so we're at the process point where we tell you where we're at. The application was submitted to I guess, did we go through all the images, Katie? Did I get there? Oh, here we go. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So these are just some slides that give you some imagery related to that mixed use building form that we're talking about. I think we've got another one that actually speaks to kind of the scale between mid-rise and low-rise buildings. And so we are very conscious of, we do have some perimeter built form across the street from us. And the goal is to try and be very thoughtful when we design those buildings, and the public realm between ourselves and the low-rise residential, so that we're compatible. So our application was submitted to the city in September of 2025, so a few months ago. We shared information to the Community Association and the Homeowners Association in October. We've had a website up since October as well, providing application information and updates. We are not sure if you've looked at the website, but certainly want to make sure you have access to it. Our goal after the information session will be to proceed, to Calgary Planning Commission and Council in the coming months, but certainly we would like to get feedback from yourselves and answer some questions here tonight that you might have. And know that if you have questions after the fact, that's okay, that's acceptable too. We will certainly accept those. And Jane, my understanding is you'll put together kind of a summary of what we've heard, and we'll respond to what we can as well tonight if we can. If there's anything we have to take away and come back, we certainly will do that too. So I think we'll probably open it up for some questions. And maybe we'll put the plan back on the screen, Jane, just in case there's, if that's the easiest one to look at while yeah. I don't see any questions yet. So certainly if you have some, please feel free to raise your hand or type them into the question and answer spot.
Yeah, as a reminder, questions can be submitted using the Q&A button, the bottom of your window, or you can also raise your hand using the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask your question out loud. Also paste it in chat. Okay, looks like Donald Scott has raised his hand. All right, Donald. Oh, I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay. Looking at the slide that's currently up, does it mean that there would be 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 10 5-story buildings in that area?
Potentially, and I might ask Allison if she wants to comment on that. I know you're starting to look at this a little bit closer. You might not have them all as kind of separate buildings. They might be compressed. But Allison, did you want to respond to that?
Sure. Yeah, we're working through the development plans right now. There is, it looks to be about 9 buildings through the primary area, which in the scale of things, those would carve the parcel up to about 2 and 1 acre parcels. So it is quite a large site. We're 14 acres over the east and the west parcel. So a very reasonable size of land compared to building density.
Did you have a
That's your
follow-up question to that? Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'll look to the questions here. We have had some come in, so we'll go through these as well. First one is, if approved, how long would construction take? Allison, what's your projection? Of course, that's always an estimate as to what you might see for, I know that you'll probably have other partners also building these. So what is the estimated time frame you thought Section 23 has thought about?
Yeah, so I mean, it does depend on the size of the building, of course. We would anticipate for a building that's approximately 100 units, over say 5 stories, that would take just over a year to construct. The larger buildings, which could be around 150 to 175 units, might take a little bit longer, so closer to a 2-year span to build those. Because we are delivering or expecting to deliver a mix of condominium as well as purpose-built rental, the timing of those buildings and the phasing of when we develop will depend on market. So we are developing a very flexible plan to ensure that we can continue moving the plan forward and building as quickly as we can to meet our market demands. So. Yeah, all overall, the entire site, I know it sounds like a long time, but it could be anywhere between sort of a 5 to say 7-year project duration for the full 14 acres. And then the building to the north of the larger parcels, again, still planning through the timing of that building, but again, based on the size, it would be probably just shy of 200 units, and that would likely take about a 2-year period to build over a six-story building.
Thanks, Allison. The next question relates to traffic speed, and is there something buffering traffic speed through the area? I mean, one thing that tends to reduce speeds, of course, is park spaces if we've got the 30-kilometer zones. Are there bump outs? Allison's the best person to ask because she knows the site so well. Are there curb bump outs around the edges, Allison, that kind of slow down kind of the corners that you know of?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that right now. I mean, certainly the plaza area along Mercado Street adds some complexity that would hopefully slow traffic down. I know that it is a brand new access point for residents of Mahogany, so you see quite a bit of traffic going through there. But the development and people parking and wandering through that will help to alleviate likely the speed. Certainly, at some point, if there's cause for concern, those would be questions that we would need to take to the city to introduce some speed bumps or traffic signage to slow it down.
Yeah.
It would certainly be in our interest for the development to ensure that the traffic is safely moving through that area.
The one-way parquet also adds to that. The movements end up slowing it down as well. Okay, the next question is there a plan? Actually, there's two questions, so it's I'm not surprised. The grain silos, is there a plan to incorporate them while still maintaining them, or any other information you can provide us on the silos to the north? Are they going to remain or be repurposed?
I knew this question was going to come up. I don't want to make any promises, but I can tell you again, it is a very important site for us. I know that planning is underway for that area. Some discussions have been to repurpose those grain containers into some type of art that we can maintain and really pay homage to sort of the history in farming. We're not sure if we will anticipate keeping all of the grain containers. We may scale those back a little bit. So again, working through the plans right now, we don't have timing confirmed for the development of that area, but it is being worked on now with the family and with our executive team at Section 23.
Mhm. Thanks, Allison. The next question takes us back to traffic, and that the 6-story buildings feels like everything's going to be congested. What is our plan to mitigate it? And I think I touched on this a little bit when I talked about having various access points that take advantage of all the roads around it, so that we're not, bringing everyone into the parkade at one spot. And there's quite a few access locations that we've identified. We also did some traffic work as part of the application, and the city is reviewing that and determining if they're comfortable. There definitely was, I mean, this area Mahogany has seen a variety of things that have occurred since the original outline plan that was approved, and it was a large area that was approved. There's been a number of applications that have changed. So the lands to the east of this site went through a change and a reduction of some of the multi-residential uses that were envisioned and brought in some low density residential. There's also been some other land use applications that have occurred to the west that have brought down some of the density just to provide different product type. So overall, we're balancing the amount of traffic, but it's a very valid question to ask. I think our goal is to try and, like I said, spread it out as much as possible. And if there's anything identified from a transportation perspective by the city, we certainly will mitigate appropriately. And if that means any changes to the application, we'll make them. The next question, and this is a great question. Your presentation suggests that this is a done deal. So why are we meeting? And this is an interesting one because all the approvals for this site have already been done. So we could essentially go and build tomorrow with land uses in place, and we're trying to modify those a little bit to adjust and kind of pivot with the districts that are existing today. And so yeah, there is some existing expectations, I would say, for the village. We're hoping to make it a little bit better, but we want to make sure that we've let residents know there's nothing more I guess, daunting than you see a land use sign out on the property and you wonder what's going on. And sometimes when a community gets approved and then takes many, many years to develop, and I can remember I was much younger when the approval went through many, many years ago. You have no idea what to expect, but we've already predicted what's going to happen through the community. And it does come as a surprise to folks when, you get into your phase and you buy into your community and don't know what's coming. And this has already been kind of planned. So appreciate the comment. We certainly do appreciate your feedback tonight. So we want to just make sure that we have residents informed as to how we're going to be moving forward, so it's not a surprise. A good question too. What types of services and shops will there be? And I think that's we can't fully predict. And maybe Allison, you want to touch on this? I think the main street nature is to have more fine grain users, and we've seen that in those other main streets that we noted. Sometimes you get a variety of food and beverage users, and then also other services that will be viable within, a main street area. Allison, have you had any pre-thoughts, or I mean, you're probably wanting to explore all options for the main street that will bring the residents probably the best amenities for them to be able to just shop and live in their community.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, you've said there, Kathy, we don't know who or what retailers will be attracted to this community. While I don't always like referencing Westman Village, it is a very good example of how the mixed use retail has been delivered successfully with reasonable services and amenity for the community of Mahogany, and then also for the residents that live within Westman Village. I also use Westman Village as a very good example because their land size was very similar to this. So their original parcel size was 14 acres. So it kind of puts a good scale to what this area is envisioned to do. And really, it is anticipated to provide a diverse mix of housing types, bringing in and allowing various different demographics to live here and to enjoy the community as well as the services that are provided. So we'll do our best to find a really good mix of tenants that fit in well with the community and that the community will utilize.
No, that's great. The next question takes us back to the traffic studies. And what have we done for traffic studies for this density increase? And how many residents would this add to Mahogany? We did do, I'm just looking at my notes here. It was a trip generation memo that was submitted to the city. And nothing was identified as concerning. They're going to finish the review, but we did do that. We also evaluated parking. So the parking was hand in hand with the trip generation. So we looked at that. And so Allison had commented on the bylaw does not require us to go to a 1.3, but certainly Section 23 sees it as a marketable number that will also avoid any pressures that would occur, in the surrounding area. As for a density increase, it's a good question. We don't have an exact number. It'll likely be adding, probably a couple hundred more units into the area. And like I noted, we have done quite a bit of changes, especially to the east, where we brought a lot of density down in previous years. And certainly if individuals were interested in knowing more, we could provide it, but our office was participated in those. And so what we did is those were assumed in those studies that we did complete. We'll know a little bit more as we get to the development permit stage and we see what size of unit has a big impact on how many units you'll achieve. And so if the desired outcome is, once you get to the 2 bedrooms, if it's more 2 bedrooms and less, 1 bedrooms, or kind of studio units, then you'll see that the numbers will be less. So we don't have an exact number at this point, but we're going to be looking at all options when we look at the buildings at the development permit stage. Okay, next question. Again, do we know what businesses are coming? Previously, you were told it would be a farmer's market. Again, we don't know exactly what we'll be curating. Allison, do you have anything about the comment about a farmer's market? I know you've got some other things programmed in Rangeview, but was there anything that you know of? And you might not know the answer. It might be years ago that some of the vision had been done, but do you have anything to comment on that one?
Yeah, no, that's okay. There was, I think the farmer's market, it was referring back to the ranch
Oh, the
site.
ranch site. Yeah.
The DC, land use on the ranch site does allow for a farmer's market. Um, we don't know if that's going to be part of the plans. It would be whatever could be supported in the area. And if farmer's market is something that is a viable use, it is allowed on that site. Within the area of Mercado Village on the 14-acre parcel, there'll be lots of areas for circulation where pop-up type markets could occur. And also in the community of Rangeview, I know a lot of those vision ideas, excuse me, around market concepts have been provided in the community of Rangeview. So kind of playing on all of those different areas for opportunities to provide a market type environment would be in the plans.
Great, thanks. The next question we have is, sorry, I'm just like, I have another one that popped in for, I'll do this one first. I own a house on the lake, and how will this project affect me? And so I've just pulled up the air photo of Mahogany. You'll know that when Mahogany was designed, it was a master plan community. And there's a variety of collector standard roads that run throughout the community, well connected, internal streets that connect to those roads. I would say anyone that was on the lake, you do have collector standard roads that would be between yourselves and this site, the southern portion of the site, and so you're going to see a lot of the traffic will be headed, along the collector streets to get in and out of the community. We hope that it would affect you in a positive way, that you've got some amenities and a great main street to come visit and enjoy. But I think generally, and that's what we look at when we look at even the original transportation when it was done for the community, was how to move, residents to and from and around as best and efficient as possible. So I hope it's a place that you'll come and it'll be your place to come and shop and utilize. Next question, will the public have access to the parkade, or is it for residents of the building, possibly their guests? And so Allison commented that the goal was to try to put visitor parking on surface, visitor parking, if there's accessible parking, and store parking, all on surface, so that when you drive up and you want to be able to go into a commercial space, it's usually you look for the spots that are at the surface. Allison, I don't think there's any intention to go below grade with visitor if you can accommodate it. I mean, you potentially would if you did not have the appropriate sites on the surface to meet the bylaw for visitor, but you're going to try to keep it at surface if you can.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep it at surface if we can, as well as just how the site and the buildings operate. It's security. We want to maintain really good security for our residents of the center, and so separating the uses between sort of public and private use would be our goal. Just introduces some additional complexities when you start mixing the two. So.
So the next question, I don't know that I know the numbers, but maybe Allison, you do, and if not, it's something we can certainly return back with. But how will the number of residents compare with what is currently at Westman Village? And now Westman Village is a little bit unique because they do have seniors in there as well. I would say site size, I'm just looking at the air photo in comparison. We're very close to the site size, I would say, give or take. But Allison, do you know the total number of units that sit at Westman? I should know this, but I don't know it offhand.
Yeah, you know what? I unfortunately I don't recall the number.
Okay.
The company I was previously with built that, but They do have some lower density product
The water.
along the lake
Yeah.
with their villa product. However, as Kathy mentioned, their seniors product and the care facilities are a little bit higher in density because the room sizes are smaller. So I would guess that it's going to be very close. We could certainly look to see if we could find out those numbers, but it's likely going to be close in numbers for the full site development.
And we can certainly follow up with that information to give that exact comparison. So we can do that. Will each unit have 2 underground parking spots? That's a lot of units and a lot more cars on the street. The intention is to go to a 1.3 ratio. So that would give almost, I would say 1 in 3 would have the extra spot. I think it's a good question for Allison. You guys have looked at the market and kind of what would be suitable. The goal is not to have cars on the street, and sometimes there's rules that come with multi residential that you can't. I don't know. Certainly, this is an area, in a one of the outer communities, but we've seen when there's multi that sometimes you can't get permits for the streets to park on if there certainly is a problem. But I think you feel very comfortable, Allison, with what you've done in your research, that this seems to be a good number.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea of how that 1.3 ratio works, so we look at it as all units would have one stall guaranteed underground. And then a second stall would be available for 50% of our 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom ratio. And that typically will provide more than enough, quite often, especially with the demographics that the area will pull from. It'll be probably excess of parking. We do also have some really good street parking around the perimeter, but we don't anticipate that being overfilled with parking. And some of the projects that we've looked at around the community tend to provide a slightly lower ratio of parking than that 1.3 mix. So
Perfect. The next question is, what are the red boxes on the map? That's a very good question. The ones to the south are the commercial sites that I identified in the overview that I gave. And those are under construction, I believe, Allison. And then the one to the north is the site that we were talking about, the ranch site. That has still got some visioning to be had. We've identified it more because it can accommodate some of those commercial uses. When we do land use planning, we typically go, red sits in that commercial type of use. We typically use brown for multi-residential, and then lighter yellow for the lower density, whether it's singles or semis, and sometimes townhomes. So yeah, those are the colors.
yeah, and the red box on the ranch site again was shown to depict an area that we would potentially provide a little bit more commercial that either fit within the existing uses, such as childcare facility, instructional facility, farmers market, things like that. The full ranch site is 7 acres, so it's very big. It's as big as the large parcels on the east and the west there. So it's a total of 7 acres. So if we put some commercial type services on that site, we anticipate that size to be approximately 2 acres of land. And you could have a restaurant there, things like that. So again, still visioning through that plan, but that will complement sort of the at-grade mixed-use retail along Mercado Street, and then the 2 southern commercial sites are being developed by Royal. And they have their DP in now and are anticipating building to deliver product in 2027. And I believe they have things like grocery store, fuel, pharmacy, all the things you need. So
Okay, the next one, I will also pass over to Allison. I think I know the answer. Will these be wood built or concrete construction?
Yeah, they will be wood built. That being said, for the underground parkades, that will be in concrete, and typically we'll bring the concrete up to the first level podium on the mixed use buildings. So we do anticipate a blend, but the five-story buildings will be wood frame from main floor to top.
What type of units are you envisioning? Luxury like Westman Village or bare bones condos?
Yeah, so again, we're anticipating bringing in a product that would be of quality very similar to what Westman Village has provided. Quality of the units themselves, again, will be very similar. If you visited Locals condominium project there, Waterside, very, very nicely appointed apartments, it would be comparable to that. But with the site and the way that we envision the site and the amenities on site, very, very close to Westman Village.
Okay. The next question, a little bit about density. When you say density is being decreased, was that before Jamin announced 5 16-story skyscrapers in the west part of Mahogany? That is, I guess when I say density has decreased, it has been decreased through applications. I certainly have not looked to see what the number of units are. We have definitely brought down the overall community over since it was originally approved, um, uh, quite a bit. But I think this is something that will need to be considered when an application goes in and the city assesses it. I'm assuming it sits within the transit station planning area. That is the area we just yesterday, Tuesday, we converted a site in there from a multi-residential to the same kind of product that's in the streams. So we've definitely seen some reduction in that area. But I can't comment on what the analysis brings that to, but I'm sure that'll be assessed when that application goes in and it'll be looked at from all the technical studies. The next question, a little bit of worry about around the farmers market or that site. Attending other meetings, it was made clear that this was the developer's hope, but not their responsibility. And I think that's what you guys are looking at, Allison, is looking at that site to see chances are, whether it's yourselves or it's, say you decide to join forces with others, the vision will come through and it'll be probably managed as one site. And I know it's not in the application right now, and it's not kind of an immediate thing that you're looking at. Do you have any other comments you'd want to give on that comment?
Again, I know without the plans in place, it's hard to reassure community members about the vision for that site. But I will just say that again, it is a very important area for us as the developer, and they are working with the community association as well as the HOA to design it for an area that could be well utilized by the community. Likely, the site will be turned over to the HOA to manage as a community added on community amenity, but all of those details are still being sorted out. Whether it is a charitable land spot that the developer would continue to operate, or if the HOA operates it, those things are still in flux. So.
Okay. The next comment was Marine Drive is experiencing a lot of speeding, and is a concern. And I think that even might play off what you just said. If there's a site in here that converts over to the HOA or becomes more of a park space, there's definitely an opportunity that could be initiated as a reduced speed area. I think that's something we'll identify to our transportation folks at the city as well as on our team, and raise this to them that this seems to be a current issue, and we'll see what they might consider doing with it. But thank you for identifying that.
And I think if there's any way that the developer can help to advocate for
Yeah.
that, we certainly will, because it is, as mentioned, in our best interest as well to keep that area safe and traffic moving slowly through
Yeah.
there.
But I recognize some might see it as a short, you know, a quick way to get across the community. The next question is this project definitely going to begin? And if so, when? And I think that's where, I mean, just recently this land was brought into the next phase of subdivision. So what we see typically is as a community builds out, and you can kind of see kind of the pattern it's gone. It just went through that subdivision process and kind of had the ability for it to be at the stage of development. So I think the goal is to get going shortly after the land use approvals. There likely will be additional subdivisions that occur if some of the parcels are made a little bit smaller, and so we'd anticipate that. And so we go through a process. The land use application, they typically take about 9 months. And then there's a subdivision process, and then we get into a development permit process. So there's probably a good chance that we won't see, I guess, Allison, what would be the first possible date that you might anticipate construction might start?
So again, no promises. Obviously, we're working towards bringing this on as soon as we can. I can tell you that we are working through DP drawings right now. Our first area of focus will be the south portion of the east parcel. So that would be the buildings that run along that angled parking or the little plaza space. So that will be sort of the first area that we'll want to bring on some development. And we are anticipating hopefully starting in the the fall of 2026.
Okay. The next one, we've got some stats. So I appreciate Wendy for providing this. So Westman Village sits on 13.6 acres with 19 buildings, and those are the condos, townhomes, and 796 units. We anticipate this, we're bigger. We're at, well, the full application area is 21.8 acres. So we are larger. We're anticipating less buildings. And then our density range is probably anywhere from I believe the original entitlements or had thought it was around that same number, around that 800 number. And then we're going to anticipate that little bit of increase, and we'll end up maybe a couple hundred more. We're still trying to determine exactly what that will be, but we'll be very similar in unit size, but we definitely have a different area. But appreciate the
Yeah, and
statistics. Yeah.
just to clarify that as well, when I said that the parcel is very similar in size to
Yeah.
Westman Village, I was only referencing the east and the west parcels,
Yeah.
not the site that's between the school. So
Yeah, the one that's to the north. Next one was, did you say the 9 buildings will have 150 units each? I don't think will be that. That seems quite high.
yeah, no,
Um,
so the buildings would likely be in and around 100 units up to probably at a very maximum 200 units over 6 stories. But yeah, just reference size wise, I would say 5-story building around that 100, and then each building will size a little bit differently depending on the subdivided parcel.
the next question, will these new units be part of the Mahogany HOA and pay fees?
Yes.
That was an easy answer as I took a glass of water, or sip of water. Um, how will these services or businesses compare to Mahogany Village Commons versus Westman Village? We're wondering if we can expect premium boutique businesses, or will they be more mainstream like Tim Hortons, Dairy Queen? Um, Likely your mainstream, I'm going to just comment, will likely go to the commercial sites that we have to the south. That's where you're going to find with the grocery offering, and if there's gas or other services, will likely go to those sites. And then Allison, you're going to start to curate some of the tenants that will go into the main street, but likely the ones that you know and we see all over the city will likely gravitate to the commercial site to the south.
Yeah, most likely. More often than not, the tenancies that will be in a mixed use building will be smaller in format. Our goal is to bring in as many sort of boutique and high valued amenities and restaurants that we can. But really, it will depend on the retailers. Desires to be in the community. I can tell you right now that we are working through pre-leasing for our small Rangeview Harvest Market, which is directly across the street on the corner of Rangeview Gate and Rangeview Boulevard. And there's some very exciting tenancies planned there. So I'm hoping that a lot of those same type of retailers and services join us here in Mahogany.
The next question is, can we expect a playground around this area for kids? There's no playgrounds around here. I do not have a map that shows all the approved park spaces because I know the southern portion is still going to be developing out. I'm happy to have that as a follow-up where we can identify within the outline plan all the park spaces that were approved as part of that plan so that you can kind of see where you've got future spaces coming. This site itself won't have a park space within it. Of course, you know, we've got the school to the north, and that's future. That typically will have a playground as well. But we'll certainly put in a map that shows the rest of the area and where you can anticipate some of the green spaces. But I don't have that with us tonight available.
Yeah, and I will just add to that, Kathy, is that we are looking obviously at who will populate the buildings in this area. So we are looking at a couple different target markets, of which include a little bit of family-oriented type of condominiums or apartments. And if we provide that type of housing, we would provide complimentary amenities for that. Will those be public? I don't believe so. But again, within the area, there's lots of amenity with the school site for children close by.
Great. There was a next question about where's the school going relative. So the school is actually sitting, if you can see the northern parcel that we have that's dashed in, the school site is directly adjacent to that parcel. When you go to Google, you'll actually see where the future kind of how it's been graded and where you might see some of the playfields going. And so it's all contained within that central area. So it's really close by. Next question. What type of school is going to be built? I do not remember. Do you remember if it's a elementary, a K-9, public or Catholic? I would have to follow up. They are all assigned. They were assigned at the time of the area structure plan. That's one thing that the school boards do is they go through and kind of identify which sites. That is another thing that we can certainly follow up with that Jane can send out to everyone and give that information about the school site and what school board has it. The next one, how many acres is the project on? That was where it was the 21.8 that includes the site to the north. How big is that site, Allison? The one that we've got on the north side of the road. Is that
I believe it's 3.6 acres.
6? So we're probably the site to the south is probably about 7 acres on each side. Is that kind of 7-8 acres in that range? Okay. On either side of Mercado Street. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then what is planned for the area north of the red block? So that's the site that has the silos on it. And Allison, I think you spoke to it a little bit about there's going to be, it'll depend on where it lands, if it stays, if it goes to the HOA, if it goes a charity donate. You guys will be sorting that out. Yeah. So unknown at this moment as to how it'll develop out. Okay, that's the last question. Is there anyone that has got a burning question they haven't asked or heard an answer to? And again, you don't have to be, you can wake up at 2 a.m. and say, I should have asked. And then Jane will take your email, but she'll probably respond at 8:30, but not at 2 a.m. We'll give it another second here and see if anybody else has another question. We appreciate you spending your time with us tonight. We know it's 7:25 on a really cold night, and it's one of those nights. Hopefully, you all had your crock pots going. We we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate the questions you've had tonight. I know we've got some follow-up items that we will definitely share. I appreciate the comments that are the worry of, what will this do for traffic? And so we certainly have done our appropriate studies to ensure that. I think what's also interesting to note is when the development permit, when we get through land use, development permit applications get submitted. Those get circulated to your HOA and your CA as well as your local counselor. Certainly want to keep you abreast of that information. Allison is always available to be able to take questions too when we get to the development stage if there's questions that you have. But the goal is to try and give you as much information as possible so you know what to expect within your community. So, Jane, is there any other information you'd like to give them?
You pretty much covered it. I guess I could reiterate if you have additional questions after tonight, or if your comments come to mind later, you could still share input. We will be circulating a feedback form following the session, and we encourage you to complete it. I'll
Yeah.
actually share that in
That'd
the
be great.
chat in
Yeah.
case people have fresh ideas and they don't want to lose it. But you can also contact me directly at jgeller@bastudios.ca. Also share
She
that
also put in the chat for you. Yeah.
also in the chat. And we'll be sharing a recording of the session with the materials from this session, like the presentation and the feedback form, to all those who registered via email. So if you didn't make it tonight, that's also okay. But now I see.
One more question. I recognize the concern about density and traffic, and so that it's one that we always see, especially when we've got some higher density buildings. We'll go back and take a look at some of the other stuff. The Jamin, I don't know if it's gone in as an official application, but certainly it's important for us to make sure that the community operates well and people can still get around. So, but I think we heard that from a few of you tonight about that concern. So thank you for making that comment. Okay, I'm going to let you 7:28. Thank you for attending. We hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll send out some of that extra information. And if you have a neighbor that couldn't make it, we can always, I think we've recorded, has a recording as well that we can share out that you can share with your neighbors so that they can be informed as well. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.